that depends on what you have to offer. Like a Lake Murray, I'm going to go look for them with my eyes. A Santee Cooper, where they spawn on trees, they spawn on grass, that type of stuff. Then you just kind of fish the places that look. Don't get me wrong, you can still sight fish 100%, but you'll fish stuff where you think one might be spawning.
Yeah, you can take it to the bank. Hold the line, hey, we on the way. All the time, yeah, we do this every day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are back here on Take It to the Bank podcast. Got my good buddy, Mr. Brian New. Been trying to track this guy down for about a week, and he just keeps fishing all the damn time. So apparently they are eating on Santee right now.
Yeah. I think they're eating everywhere.
Tis that time of year.
Santee is Santee. So when they're eating, you go to Santee.
I don't blame you at all. Don't blame you at all. So we are talking about herring lakes in April.
Yep.
One of my favorite times to fish. Obviously you like it too, or you, as much as you like fishing, it's one of your favorite times of the year as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about the month of April in Georgia, South Carolina. Those to me, April's like a big change month. So from the 1st of April, you may still have some winter patterns to the end of April. They may be on their summertime stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the month and how they transition on these herring lakes during that time of year.
Yeah. So, April is love making month. It's the bass are making love, the crappie are making love, the herring are starting to make love. And, the bass spawn itself, April's the month. In the Carolinas, April has always been the month. Of course, you kind of got to look geographically, like we say North and South Carolina, but you can go west and you've got mountains, or you can go farther east and it's closer to the coast. So everything does typically start closer to the coast and work its way west. So you just kind of got to look at that. But bass spawn, number one, that's always something you've got to look for. But the herring spawn starts going in April as well. I think this is the first week of April, right? I think
it is the first week of April.
Right now. All right. So yeah, the herring spawn is just starting. I don't know every lake, but there's only a handful of herring lakes. True herring lakes. You've got Hartwell, Murray, Clark's Hill, Lanier, Russell. And there's a few more, but that's your really mainly only core herring lakes in the country. Of course there's some in other lakes, but that's true herring lakes.
And we'll probably touch on some of those lowland reservoirs and the differences in them here as well. The Santees and the whatever the bay is that we're about to go fish in, or y'all are about to go fish in North Carolina. Some of those more tidal stuff too. But it's love making month. So everybody thinks February is love making month. In fishing world, April is it.
Yeah. At least my area. And honestly, throughout the country, at least the southern portion of the country, it is. But yeah, bass spawn and bait fish spawn, so we say I live on a herring lake. Everybody thinks I'm an expert. I'm really not. I've only been down here a few years. But you also have a shad spawn. You have a shad spawn on herring lakes as well, because they have shad also. So that's another deal. Oh, definitely a lot different than a herring spawn, but it's real similar at the same time, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it absolutely
it's like
does.
Talk to a woman, I think. Like it's the same but different.
I get it completely.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the bass spawn first, because usually they start spawning with the water temperatures a little bit colder than your bait fish spawns. What do you look for? Are you're actually visually looking for them on bed? Or are you blind casting? Tell me about your approach when you get to one of these lakes in your part of the world and think that bass should be spawning.
Yeah. So, that depends on what you have to offer. Like a Lake Murray, I'm going to go look for them with my eyes. A Santee Cooper, where you have they spawn on trees, they spawn on grass, that type of stuff. Then you just kind of fish the places that look. Don't get me wrong, you still sight fish 100%, but you'll fish stuff where you think one might be spawning, like to St. Johns River. When I won a few years ago, I was catching spawners, but I was not looking at them. And I was just blind fishing pads. I could see the pads, but I couldn't see the bass. But I caught a lot of them, and then I seen them. But no, so how your lake lays out definitely has a lot to do with where you're going to look first. Like a normal lake, and I don't know if that's the right term, but in my mind, a normal lake is like a Lake Murray, Lake Clark's Hill, Lake Norman. Those are what I call normal lakes because that's what I grew up fishing the most of, is those type of lakes. You didn't have trees, you didn't have grass, you didn't have that stuff. So you would just go down the bank and look for spawners. Well, those first spawners, which actually you'll see that in, late March a lot of times. And another thing that a lot of people thinks it's the warm up, the water temperature. And yes, that does play. But one of the biggest things is the daylight hours. Obviously, the further we get into the spring, we gain a few minutes every day on those daylight hours. And that's a big deal, more so than anything. Of course, the moon. There are a lot of things that factor in, but I truly believe that the daylight hours are the biggest thing.
And that's why the big push is going to be in the month of April. That's when the photo period, there's your big word, for daylight hours, that's when that lines up the best. Now, what do you think about moon phase? How big of a player does it make in bass or baitfish spawn?
I think spawn of all sorts, bass, bluegill, baitfish, all of that. I think the moon's a huge factor. And then when you talk tidal river stuff, we're completely different, but the moon has a huge factor because it has a huge effect on the tide. I personally don't know enough about it because I've fished plenty of tidal rivers, but we're talking a week at a time. That's not enough time to truly understand what the moon does to a tide. You take somebody like Brian Schmidt, who owns the tidal rivers and knows the heartbeat of a tidal river. He can answer that question for you. But the moon absolutely does have a factor throughout the year, summertime, this and that. Maybe, but I don't pay attention to it. Maybe I'm dropping the ball and missing something, but I don't. But around the spawn, I absolutely do. And it's not always the full moon. It's the new moon also. The new moon will trigger stuff.
But you kind of want one extreme or the other. That's what gets stuff moving. Not that you won't find spawners, in a waning crescent or a waxing whatever, gibbous, I think's another word there.
Yeah, you're going over my head with those. I have seen those terms, but I don't know what they mean. I guess, do you get more earwax in the mornings whenever you have a waxing moon? I don't know. But before we got off subject, the first place I'm going to look for those spawning bass on what I call a normal lake, I've got the farthest back of pockets. As it progresses closer out to the main lake, the main big creek arm, I'm going to look there more because I've always, in everything, felt like your bigger fish live in the bigger water, not necessarily deep, but bigger water where they have more area to roam, more area to get away from whatever it is. And why do they need to go way back in somewhere? The reason they need to go way back in somewhere at the beginning, because it's just now starting to get warm. Or that shallower water is going to warm up a little bit quicker. Not only is the shallower it is, it's going to warm up quicker, but the farther from the big water, it's going to cool down slower. Because you got 100 foot of water that's several miles wide. It takes a lot longer to heat that up than it does the back end of a creek or a pocket.
Deep. Yeah.
Yep.
Get that
that's
completely.
More protected as well from wind.
Well, let's go ahead and pull up a map right here, and we're going to be on Clark's Hill, which is a lake that you are pretty familiar with, and you can see that there. So we've got Clark's Hill as a whole here, got kind of a narrow river section, got quite a few feeder creeks off of it. Then you get down here to the lower end. Looks like there's one giant creek or
That's
river.
another river. That's the Georgia Little River. Yeah. So
gotcha.
you got two main rivers that feed Clarksville, and there, and then down at the lower end is kind of your lake, I guess you could call it. Like I call both of those big arms rivers. I mean, you got to get way up for it to truly become a river, but it's still fairly wide. But so kind of backing up a little bit more again, you know, you've got two different deals. You got a run-in pocket, which is where water runs in, whether it's a little feeder creek in the back of it, or it's just where water runs in whenever it rains. It drains in. But and then you have your dead end ones that, I mean, of course, there's going to be some water run in a little bit, but it's not going to be a main run in. So those dead end pockets are the ones that I'm going to look for first as well. They're going to stay warmer. Now you can get a warm rain and it'll warm those run-in pockets as well, warm it a little quicker. But typically, a lot of times that rain will cool it off or dirty it up or both.
Okay, that's a really, really good point there. So to me, a dead end pocket that you're talking about has got it's almost square at the back, or it's rounded at the back. It's not like I call them a holler pocket.
Yeah. So if you look, and you're right on that, but also if you look, stay right there where you're at, and kind of on the right side of the map, you've got one arm, it goes back there, and it's got three little legs. Well, that middle leg, you can see it's flatter. So it's not rounded like you're saying, but it's flatter. So that's telling me that there's a good chance that there's not a lot of water flowing through there. So that's probably a dead end. And of course, different maps. I run all it. I've got Navionics, Sea Map, Lake Master. I've got every map you can have, and they're all great for certain different things. Some places they're better than others, but I think that's Navionics you're looking at there, and it's good. But Google Earth, is another one that for seeing, okay, is there a little feeder that runs in there? And there's several apps too nowadays that show you where water runs in. So that's another way to either seek that out or eliminate it.
So let's go ahead and I'll actually pull it up here on Google Maps, the same area as well. Yeah. There's where I was. I was around the Parksville Wayside Park, I believe. So what are you looking for on Google Maps or Google Earth that's going to show you, where fish are spawning this time of year?
So, I mean, kind of the same thing I'm looking for on a contour map. I want those dead end places. I want somewhat flat stuff. It doesn't have to be super flat. It can be too flat, because if it gets too flat, then it's hard to narrow it down. Where if it's a slightly flat bank, I can just go down the bank and they're pretty much going to have to spawn within sight of where I'm going. Maybe it is a little bit farther out than I can see on a stump, but it's not just this big, broad, vast flat where they can spawn anywhere on, whether it's a stump or a rock or just on the bottom in general. It just, of course, say if it is a big flat, I want to try to see, is there a patch of stumps in this section of it, or something like that? Because, I mean, bass will spawn on nothing, but they like to spawn on something.
I get that completely. Okay. This is just kind of the difference between some run-in stuff and the dead end pockets that you were talking about. Like you can actually see the ditch in the back of this one.
Yes. Yeah, so obviously that's a run-in, when you have a defined ditch like that in the back. But you see how that left side of that pocket is more flat than the right side? But they're going to spawn on both sides. But you get on farther back there, it looks flat on the right side as well. They'll spawn on both sides, but you're not going to see every fish. Kind of got to play the, can't think of that fancy word, but You want to give yourself more opportunity.
So how do you do that? Are you blind fishing for them? And as you're going down the bank and then you see one and you catch three in between seeing beds, or tell me your process when you get to a lake like this.
I typically don't just look and not cast. I'm typically throwing something around, whether I'm throwing a wacky worm at light spots or dark spots while I'm going down the bank looking. I mean, because you're just not going to see them all. But I mean, nowadays with the scope, love it or hate it, I mean, if I see a stump and it's not super deep, like I'm going to probably throw at it. One may be spawning on it. One may be garden fry on it. So yeah, I mean, it's always looking. You're either looking for fish, looking for light spots, dark spots, or looking for it on your scope.
Let's get into the scoping just a little bit. I think it's a thing that is not uncharted, but a lot of people don't know how to look for bed and bass on LiveScope.
I'm not good at it. I'm not good at it, but I mean,
is this when you run a perspective, or do you run a perspective all year?
So I wish I knew more about it. I mean, I've caught them on forward off the bed. I've caught them perspective off the bed. The perspective deal, though, I have noticed you need what I call a normal lake. Perspective's not that great because there's too many contours. There's not enough soft bottom. But you take somewhere like a Florida lake, perspective's huge because it's bass flats. The whole thing's flat. It's got that softer bottom. So beds just show up a lot better on perspective. For me, in my experience, and I haven't done it a whole lot. I have caught a decent amount of fish doing it, but I can't sit here and act like I really know what I'm talking about.
So are you using perspective or are you using forward?
Forward, more often than not. It just depends on what lake I'm at. Like when we go to the Sound next week, I'm going to play with both in practice, and we can only run, I say only very loosely because it doesn't change anything. We can only run one transducer this year. So it is aggravating switching back and forth. I run a Geiger Tech mount, which is actually really awesome. So I am easily able to switch it back and forth, but I still have to pull my trolling motor out and then change my settings and this and that. So I do have to go back and forth. And I don't like doing that. Like when we were at St. John's, when I was fishing shallow, when I was fishing for bank or spawn related fish, I would run perspective. But then when I would fish shell, I would put it in forward. So it kind of got aggravating where I said, screw it. I don't need perspective on the bank. Like I'm just going to leave it in forward. But whichever one I feel like is a little bit better there, probably going to roll with that.
What are your forward settings on as far as, how far out and down you're looking? I mean, we don't have to get into sensitivity and all that junk, but your forward setting when you're looking in shallow water.
So I've always been 120 out, always, period. 120 out. I have backed up to 100 and even sometimes 80 when I get shallow, say 5 foot or less. And Joey Fuentes taught me this last year. But depth, I basically never go below 30. I mean, I never go below 20. And I basically keep it 30 plus for depth. And I mean, yeah, it blows stuff up, but it distorts the picture whenever you start zooming in more. Or I don't know if you want to say, yeah, I mean, I guess that is zooming in. Because it stretches the image. There's like a set, and I don't know what it is. I'm sure every graph is a little bit different. I run the cheapest Garmin you can get, that you can do LiveScope on. But there's like a set deal, like this is what it's supposed to be, dimension-wise. And if you zoom in too much, you're either stretching the image. If you zoom out, you're compressing the image. So there is like a fine line of this is what you should be running, no matter the depth. There's a lot of wasted screen, but it's still the best image.
That's pretty juicy.
I am no LiveScope expert whatsoever, but I have caught bass on it more than once.
I would think so.
Maybe less than 4 times, but more than once.
I've been in a boat with you, and the way you move, number one, I think is from growing up on these Carolina fisheries. But your trolling motor's on 1,000 all the time. Your trolling motor's set on 10, and the only reason it's set on 10 is because it don't have 12.
Right.
Talk a
yeah.
little bit about that and how you tie that into bed fishing in the month of April.
So, and you say that, but it does come down. Like, I want to cover as much water until I find something special, whatever that may be. If it's an 8-pounder on the bed or if it's a place you catch them every cast, that's what I'm looking for. Whenever I find what I'm looking for, like truly looking for, hopefully catch a few in between. But when I find what I'm truly looking for, I'll slow down and fish with the snails, and I can do that. But I have to know I'm on the right stuff before I do that. But yeah, it's just covering water, being more efficient. I mean, everything I do, I try to do it efficiency. You know, every job I've ever had, all right, this is the task. How can I be the most efficient at it? And
And
now,
cover
so to tie that into bed fishing is, I mean, just because I'm going down the bank too fast and I'm on top of that fish before I see it, I mean, I know where it is now. I can either have a visual reference or a waypoint, whatever, go on down the bank if I was too close and spooked it off or whatever the case would be. See if I see any more, come back around, and I know where it's at so I can approach it and stay farther away from it, farther than I would have been able to see it anyways.
Yep.
So
is
it's
that what you think a key is getting to those fish before they know you're there?
I think, you know, every fish is a little different. I'm no John Cox by any means, but to me, I mean, I've seen plenty of fish that you could sit right on top of and just they bite your rod tip if you stuck it in front of them. But a lot of fish, if they know your presence is there, just they'll swim off and won't come back. They'll swim off and stay out of the bed, or you just can't catch them. Like, or it's extremely hard. So I do, if I know, like, if it's a spawn tournament, I've got a bunch of fish marked. They want a tournament, I'm running to those fish. I'm definitely going to blind cast to those fish multiple times before I ever get up shallow enough or close enough to see them. I mean, so stealth is such a big deal to me in every aspect of fishing, whether you're scoping, sight fishing, ledge fishing, brush pile fishing, burning down the bank looking for wolf packs or skipping docks. Stealth is a big deal. I mean, sure, you can jump up and down and hoop and holler and have your big motor running and catch fish every now and again, but you're not going to catch them all. You're never going to catch them all, but you get my drill.
Yeah, 100%. What does that mean to you? So what are you actively thinking about while you're on the water trying to be more stealthy?
I want to be as quiet as I can, you know, in every aspect. And I tell you a cool thing. So this is my second year running the power pole move trolling motor, and oh my God, how quiet! Like I literally, for the first couple months of having it, I was like, why is my trolling motor not working? And I was like, oh, it is. I just don't hear it. And you know, I wasn't burning down a bank at 4 miles an hour where it's obvious that it's working, you know, just creeping down a bank or whatever it is. And you don't notice that you're moving, but you don't hear your trolling motor. So that's a big deal. They also this year released the one pump. So now when I put my power poles down, I have one pump running instead of two. So it's much quieter there as well. You definitely don't want to slam boxes, you know, when you're walking around the boat. Be stealthy. If you can see the fish can see you. So you want to try not to just move around, try to be slow and just trying to be stealthy. Get your ghillie suit out.
I think sun angle is a big thing, and like your
100%.
shadows a
Yeah,
lot of
your
times
shadow,
will spook
for
fish
sure.
insanely bad.
For sure, definitely. Yep. Of course, your shadow reaches a lot further than you do. Of course, it depends on the sun angle at that time and changes over time. So if I'm blind or not blind bed fishing, but if I'm sitting way back from a fish on the bed and it's taking me a little while, well, every few minutes my shadow gets closer and closer to something. If at all possible, I want to try to definitely think ahead on that. Okay, if this takes me 15, 20 minutes, am I at a position that my shadow's not going to get and start reaching that fish?
Next level.
Think about this too. So we see shadows on the surface and think that that's where they stop, but it's not. So a shadow is at an angle, obviously. So it penetrates through the water, obviously, and it keeps going down at whatever angle that is. So it's reaching farther. than what you see.
That's juice. I've never thought about that it goes farther than what you're thinking about there. But no, it makes sense.
Well,
Makes a
you
ton of
think
sense.
about, you cast your line out and you see it going to the water at an angle, and you see, okay, it stops at the surface. It don't stop at the surface, and it's not straight below where it goes in the surface at. It's farther out there at an angle.
Goes at the exact same angle. That's pretty juicy. What 5 or 6 bait? Now, you're a guy that's known for having 25 rods on the front of your Falcon there.
On each side, because I got a big deck.
You do have a big deck. Don't believe you just asked.
You know what I heard the other day?
What'd you hear?
Charlie Ingram's been fishing for 40 years, and his deck's bigger than ours.
Dude, he moved over to a Falcon and his deck got ginormous. I don't know. He's pretty proud of it. He tells people about it a lot.
Too.
Give me the best 5 or 6 baits in this part of the country that you are going to have everywhere you go. Colors, setups, the whole 9 yards.
We got to mix in that herring deal too, So if I could have 5, I'm not going to have 5. I'm going to have 6. But you said 5 or 6. I got to go to the
6, 7, whatever. This is my podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So when you talk herring, I got 100 herring baits that I always have, but I can only have 5 or 6. So I'm going to say 3 herring baits, 3, spawn bank baits. Herring is 100% going to be a Spro Sashimi swimmer, 100% a fluke, 100% a walking bait. Spro walking haint's a really good one. There's a lot of good ones, but those are my 3 have to have herring bait rods. Actually, there's actually one that would probably cancel one out, but I can't talk about it yet. But it would definitely cancel one out if I could only have 3.
Don't be teasing us like that.
Huh?
I said, don't be teasing us like that. I mean, you got to give me a little bit of more info than that. There's just one.
I'll tell you this. It's a brand new design Spro bait that is right, but the factory sample is not there yet. So I would like for it to be out yesterday, but it's not.
Hard bait?
Maybe. Set up all 3 of those. I'm going to throw on an 8-to-1 reel, Arc Gravity reel. They're all good. I use the 5, 7, and 8 more than anything. Line, fluke, and sashimi. I'm going 16-pound FC Sniper fluorocarbon. Walking haint, I'm going 35-pound AMZ braid. Rod wise, throwing a 7.2 Invoker Pro. It's a regular action, so it's a little bit softer. A medium heavy, or it's medium. It's fairly light. I think it's actually a medium. It's fairly light rod, but I'm able to make those long casts. The treble hooks, it's not going to rip them out of their face, and it's got plenty of power to drive that hook in the fluke. Burning down the bank, spawning fish. I'm definitely gonna have a wacky worm. Actually, this week I've been playing with a wacky worm on a bait caster. It's got to be a little bit bigger, heavier one. So I'm playing with that. So I've not got that dialed in yet. But my typical wacky setup is Brandon Cobb's Hartwell Magic. I think it's a 610 medium spinning rod. I've went up to the 3000 size arc spinning reels. And then, I on a wacky worm, I use 2 different braids on a spinning rod. I use a sinking braid that Sunline makes. It's called All Might. I use that for a lot of stuff, but wacky worm, I don't want a fast fall. So I stick with the AMZ, like that 16, 18 pound range, and either 10 or 12 pound leader. If it's super, super clear and they're really finicky, I might go down to 8, but pretty much 10's my starter. I put, like a trick worm or Cinco style bait. I put that on either a number 1 or a 1/0. G Finesse stinger hook. It's like that straight shank style finesse hook. That's pretty much it for the wacky.
You do the weedless stinger or the regular?
Both. It just depends. If it's more open water, not a lot to get hung on, I go open. But, if I'm skipping around cypress trees like that one right there, or maybe even that one right there, then I'm definitely going on weedless or grass or docks. It just depends. But so that's my wacky. I like to have a swim bait of some sort, like a shad is good. I like soft swim baits as well.
That mag draft style?
Yeah, I like that stuff there. I like a bunch of different ones, and there's not one that's, okay, this is the one. Like that mag draft or Megala John style bait, I like to throw those on those normal lakes that I speak of. Of course, I'll throw it on other lakes as well, but when you're skipping around cypress trees or something like that, like you're going to get hung up a lot, or grass, like that hook's going to get caught on grass a lot, and you like that cast is wasted 100%. I got a handful of different rods I like to throw the shad on, and so Arc has a glide bait rod, but I personally like it's a 7.6 medium heavy Essence is where I've just really started liking that rod a lot more. And so I went with Kevin Brightwell that owns KGB Swim Baits. We did a deal with Spro last fall, and he really got me. I learned a lot from him about it. So he uses braid to a mono leader, where a lot of people, I heard something buzz and it was a plane. I thought my trim was going up. A lot of people use straight fluorocarbon, and I have a lot. So the braid to leader deal is fairly new to me, but it's definitely, the bait's more responsive. And another thing, he uses an 8-1 reel, and I really seen the advantages of that. So I definitely go with the 8-1. I'm pretty sure I'm going to say go braid to a mono leader, like 50, 60 pound braid, and just depending on bait size wise. But for the shad, I'm going to go, 18 to 20 pound leader.
And the mono leader just gives that braid enough. I mean, it's still a treble hook bait, right? It's a giant crankbait.
Yeah.
And so that gives it enough stretch that you're not ripping that hook from them and that kind of thing, right?
That, as well as it helps it doesn't let that fluorocarbon manipulate and sink down below the bait and start pulling the bait down. You can just control the bait a little bit better, it seems like. And I haven't done it a ton, so I'm not super, super dialed, but feel like I'm getting there. So I definitely like the mono leader for sure.
Braid to a leader is pretty cool on a lot of different things. I started like flipping bushes with braid last year to a 20 pound mono or fluorocarbon leader.
I know a lot of people do, and I mean a lot of great people do, but I'm just not down with it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't like it.
Not a fan, huh?
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not my thing. What I don't like is that, not even though it's an FG, we're talking big line, and you go to almost tripling the diameter of the line. You're at least doubling the diameter of the line.
For sure.
Yeah, that's a lot more going through your guides, and I'm not down with it yet.
I don't like it going through my guides.
What it would do, though, what it does do, saves you a lot of money on line. You don't have to change your line near as long.
That's true. So I only use like a 3-foot leader or a 4-foot leader, something where it never comes back in my guides. Yeah, it never comes back in my guides.
Yep. So there's two. I would say wacky worm and swim bait. I mean, I'd probably say a jig. Well, I'll say this: don't ever in your life, never, ever, ever flip a jig at a spawning bass, a fish in the bed. I don't know why, but I know for me and Brian Thrift, 95% of the fish on the bed that we throw a jig at, we foul hook. Don't know why, but it does. Like I went a couple weeks ago at Murray, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to see him on the bed, but I didn't have much in the boat. I had like some scoping stuff and a jig, and I don't know what else. But the jig was the only thing I had that I could bed fish with. And like the first two, I foul hooked. I was like, this sucks. It's like the same old, because I refused to do it, but I didn't have another option,
Right. Texas rig box wasn't in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, a wacky worm's great, and for spawning fish, jig, they'll bite it. Probably gonna foul hook them. But I mean, if I'm sight fishing, course, I'm going to have a Texas rig, 100 different plastics that are great. Tell you, a sneaky little deal. I don't know if we can put it in my top 6 rods, but a sneaky little deal is the hide up koi. It's
the hairy ball.
Urchin, the hairy ball. Actually,
we're going to get one.
This one right here. Right here it is. It's hairy and it's fuzzy in it. They bite it. It's wild. I don't know. It's wild, but they bite it. I do like that, and that's a really, really good bed fishing bait. Whether it's a drop shot or, it's really a Nico, but it's kind of weird to call it a Nico because the nail weight's not at the other end of the worm. You just put a nail weight through the center of it and hook it like you would a wacky. Those are kind of the ways the first fish I ever caught on a koiki was on the bed at Lake Murray last year. And it's a wild deal. Very, very little movement of the, you moving it. It just comes to life. All those little, whatever you want to call them, they just wiggle and don't stop. See, look at that.
And you're flipping it on a bait caster then?
Yeah. So this is the full cast. There's a couple different sizes in the U.S. We have the full cast, which is big, and the 17 millimeter, which is quite a bit smaller. But yeah, I've got this on a bait caster here. Just kind of, actually, Kenta told me this little deal, so I got it on a that wacky style hook, but I've got a wobble head on it. Gamakatsu makes, I think it's called the hybrid swing head, something like that. Different sizes, and I really like it like that. It's kind of like a little short shank jig head. You can put whatever hook you want to in it, but I mean that's not what it's made for. But you can use it like that, and since Kenta told me that, I've adapted it to this deal, and I really like it. But with it swinging like it just makes that deal move that much more, especially when you're shaking it in place.
What's your Texas rig set up? Because everybody's going to be flipping a Texas rig on the bed.
Yeah, I really, if I'm going bed fishing, I'm definitely going to have 3 Texas rigs just for that. I'm always going to have a tube. Always going to have a tube. I'm going to have some kind of crawl, and then I'm going to have another crawl. I'm going to have one white bait, and I'm going to have probably a 5/16. I'm going to have a 3/8, and I'm going to have a half. And the heavier, the reason I don't want a heavier one is because sometimes you got to start hitting, like actually physically hitting the bass in the face to make him bite. And the heavier, the better, just because it pisses him off more.
It does. It does.
But I like a tube. I like the profile of a tube. Problem is the best tube that was ever made is no longer made, and I would love to flip them, but I don't have enough to just use them, so they're only for bed fishing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's other tubes that work, but they're not the best that was ever made.
You care to tell us what the best tube that was ever made was?
I don't care to tell you. No.
Oh, I didn't figure.
No. I mean, I'm an honest man. I'm not going to lie to you.
This is true. All right. Well, we've covered bed fishing pretty well. We're looking in the backs of those dead end pockets first, moving our way out. There's quite a few baits that we're going to use. Let's talk about the shad spawn, the herring spawn, and how, you find that, what it looks like, where those things spawn. And that's my favorite thing to do in the whole entire world is catch them on a shad spawn. I've never done it on a herring lake, but shad spawn fish to me is amazing. Like you don't have to wait on it. You set your boat down and you start catching them if you're going to catch them.
A lot of times, but even with that, I mean, fishing pressure, man, especially herring spawn, because everything's obvious, everything's known, and those fish, I'm telling you, so this week, literally the herring started spawning at Lake Murray this week. I know that to be a fact, and they don't start everywhere at one time, but it's progressed throughout the week. And I know I'm not at Lake Murray right now, but I was 2 different days this week. And I know people that have been there for every day this week, and it's progressed every day. Next week, you will not be able to just get on any point you want to, period. And it's going to be like that for a month, at least. That being said, extremely super duper highly pressured. Shad spawn's a little different. Shad spawn, it's not just on long points or just on these. Yeah, and that long point term kind of, I guess, just carried, but it's not just long points that the herons spawn on. I mean, they'll spawn on short stuff as long as it's got to be shallow, it's got to be somewhat flat. But shad spawn, it depends on what your lake has to offer. A Santee Cooper, shad are going to spawn on the grass. The cypress trees obviously is a big deal. You take
Let's look at really quickly. Let's roll back to Clark's Hill here, and
yep.
This is still kind of on that main lake area that we were close to earlier. And if you are looking for a herring spawn, give me an area that you think that, are you looking for? How shallow water are you looking for? And then give me what you're looking for.
So right there, just below your cursor, you got two islands, and they come together. There's a little blow through right there. Like where they come together, that's going to be a place I'm going to look. It's probably all that I see right there that I'm going to look. Right there, that island where it connects to the bank. It's shallow and it runs out to that island. That's the place I'm going to look. The top right of your corner, that little point that sticks out, it's flat right there. Blow throughs, that's exactly that stuff. A blow through, which is what you're on right now, or a point that sticks out. I mean, and honestly, it could even be just like a little hump, just a little shallow hump. But that's the type of stuff you want to look for on the herring spawn.
What does that herring spawn look like?
Wild. So most of the time you don't physically see it. Like where a shad spawn, you'll see them flipping on the cypress trees or running circles around the trees or the dock or the riprap bank or the bridge pilings. Hard stuff is what they spawn on. And of course the shad, you'll see, the grass, you'll see the shad flipping on the surface as well. Typically, and I don't know this to be fact. I think I know this, but I don't know it to be fact. I think the reason those shallow flat places where the herons spawn is because typically the places are that hard clay bottom. And I think they spawn on the bottom. I think. Only been here a few years, and typically I'm out of town whenever it's really hot and heavy. So I think that's my theory. I mean, I think it's a pretty good theory.
So they follow a swim bait, a spinner bait, anything like that?
Anything. But to find it, they can tie you on a good greenfish spinner bait or any kind of spinner bait and just throw it. And they follow it just like the shad do. And they try to, sometimes you get it back and your skirt might be all stuck together or something, because it got a little sticky. Yeah, they'll follow it when you see that the presence of heron are there. That doesn't mean the bass are there. But
that's one of the big. Have you been able to put anything together? I was at Eufaula a few years ago. Well, it is actually the one that you won that put Bryan New on the map was the ABA Ray Scott Championship, and you absolutely whipped my ass there. And that was the most amazing shad spawn I'd ever found. But shad were spawning in a million places, and bass weren't in them. How is there anything that you do to try to find, or that you've been able to correlate where the bass are in a shad spawn?
Let's face it, most people fish on a couple lakes, and they know those lakes. You go to your lake and know where you fish all the time. You know where you've caught them. If this is a good area, and right there is a shad they're spawning, good chance there's going to be some bass in them. If I'm in an area and there's just fish laid up everywhere on the bed, but then there's a shad spawn just out from it, I'm not catching any fish. Well, that's going to tell me, okay, well, the reason I'm not catching any bass in the shad spawn is the majority of them are up there getting it on themselves. Where, okay, I might start seeing other areas of the lake that I'm not seeing a bunch of fish on the bed, but there's a shad spawn. And then this is just a trial and error deal. Like maybe they're a little bit past that section of the lake on their spawn, and they're out there feeding on whatever bait fish spawn it is, herring, shad. So that's one thing that I'm going to look for, or that I would look at or into with that question. But herring spawn especially, of course, they don't just school constantly all day long, but you'll see them schooling. I mean, like if there's several points close by, you can just sit out there on spot lock and just watch, and you'll see the ones that come up blowing. But of course, you can easily miss something that way as well.
Okay. And
But those
baits.
school like that Eufaula tournament you're speaking of, I'll never forget. I see it vividly. I was actually just telling the story the other day. Like every day of practice, you've seen the heron birds on the bank lined up in a row, and we can kind of, well, let's touch on it right now. Just cause you like, if I'm running down the lake or the river or the creek, I'm probably not going to see those shad flipping on those trees or on that bank or that dock, whatever it may be. But if I see a bunch of birds, not seagulls, I'm talking blue heron birds or white heron birds lined up on the bank, there's a shad spawn there. So every single morning of practice that you follow that tournament, 2019 Race Caught Championship, I seen those birds all over the lake on the bank. Never once seen the first shad, which just contradicts what I just told you. But we blast off day one of the tournament. I come out of the basin. Those birds ain't just sitting there. They're everywhere, and they are going nuts. Like my wife, whenever I make her mad. And I was like, wow. And like you said, it was the most incredible shad spawn in the history of mankind. Nuts. And I caught like one bass.
No.
Like there. I mean, it might have been two. It wasn't much. I was like, well, that sucks. Like, I was so excited because I didn't have much. I didn't think I had much. I had one little back end of a creek that they were spawners, I felt like. But I was blind fishing for them, just flipping trees is what it was. But I caught 1 6-pounder and shook a handful off, and that was the best thing I had for practice. So when I come out of the basin and see the birds going nuts, I was like, let's start right here. I know there's a lot of fish released here, a lot of big ones too. And it's a good creek in general. And it just sucked. It sucked. Then my tournament turned out pretty good, but it just kind of transpired throughout the first day. After I was like, okay, I got 18 pounds. I'm pretty happy. I'm not burning the only thing I have to the ground. Just exploring. It was like, oh, wow. I made 2 stops and I was at 25 pounds. It was like, okay. But yeah, to your point, though, that was the most incredible shad spawn, but it sucked.
Why did it suck? You want 100? What I remembered most about that
fishing did not suck, but the shad spawn bite sucked.
What I remember most about that very first day is I did the same thing you did. I stopped on my very first spot, and like I had caught a limit on a wacky worm in 45 minutes or something. They were small. Had like 1 3-pounder. And then I roll out around a point, and the wind's kind of beating in on it. And I'm like, this looks like a pretty good spot for a spinnerbait. And I threw a spinnerbait back, and I was like, tick, 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 tick.
Shad ball.
I was like, oh, I know what this is. And I ran to one spot around a corner that had some riprap and had 18 in like 5 casts. I was like, oh, heck. And I knew 18 was going to do okay. And I run shad spawn stuff the rest of that day. The only time I've ever seen shad spawn completely throughout the day. Like most time it's a morning deal. The very last cast I made was in the creek that you're talking about on some riprap, and shad spawned at 3 o'clock that afternoon, and I never found another bass.
I mean, they can't be everywhere.
They can't be everywhere.
They can't be everywhere. I mean, that's why you don't catch bass every cast. They're not everywhere. And it's process of elimination. Every single aspect of what we do is process of elimination. Even if you're a super scoper just roaming out in the middle of the ocean, they're not everywhere.
They aren't. We've covered how to catch bass. We've covered how to catch some bait fish spawns, that kind of thing. You grew up, you got your start fishing as a co-angler with Brian Thrift, who one of my favorite pros in the world. Like I love the way he thinks about it. I love the way he goes about his business. I'm a big Brian Thrift fan.
So, like, who's cooler, Brian Thrift or Brian?
Brian Thrift, 100%.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're
So
okay.
I seen these three guys in Fort Worth at a bar. They had a message wrote on their bellies.
They did.
Trying to remember what it said, but I don't know. Yeah, what were you saying?
So give me your, and I've got to know Brian Thrift a little bit as well through you. So give me your funniest Brian Thrift, Brian news story.
Gosh, I don't. Well, yeah, I know what it was. Lake Hartwell 2014, Casey Ashley win practice. It was cold. It was cold. So me and Thrift are fishing this pocket, and Hartwell's millions of docks. These two dogs come down to the dock we're fishing and start getting it on. We start laughing, cutting up, making jokes, Go to the next dock. Two dogs run over to that dock. They start getting it on.
Same two dogs or two different dogs?
No, the same two.
Okay.
Next dock, they run over there. They ran to every single dock in the pocket, and they made love on every single dock. We've got a lot of funny ones, but it's funny, but you would have just kind of had to be there funny,
Yeah.
Like I don't know. There's probably better ones, but that's the first one that come to mind.
Do you think that his cargo shorts make him the angler that he is?
I think he might have I don't know, maybe. I'm not around him nearly as much, but I think he may have upgraded. Maybe, I don't know. He's got a little bit modern. A little.
Man wins a Forest Wood Cup and gets big time. Starts drinking real nice bourbon and shit like that.
Well, I don't think he actually drinks it for the most part. He just collects it. But hey, speaking of, so he's got this, a lot of people do. He's got this super high dollar collection of bourbon. And I went to my mom's a couple weeks ago, and I haven't took everything out. So I've still got a bunch of trophies and everything there, but I've got 2 bottles of bourbon that I got in the race got at Eufaula that I won. I got one that's it's got on the label, it says 2019 American Bass Angler Race Caught Championship Odor Champion. And the other one says same thing, but Big Bass winner. So it's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
I don't know if it's high dollar. I'm sure it's not like no Pappy Van Winkle or anything.
Well, it's high dollar to you.
It's got a pretty cool label.
Give me the most memorable fish loss of your career.
13, Lake Eufaula. Day 2, I was with the legendary, awesome man, Guido Hibden.
Wow.
He whipped my butt. And still to this day, don't understand the difference. I'm not going to go into detail, but what he was doing, what I was doing, don't understand. But he said, well, I ain't want to tell somebody what to do, but boy, you better change to this. And I did. And I'm telling you right now, I was like, holy crap. Wow. But anyways, so late in the day, I already had what I weighed in, but late in the day, I skip up under a dock, skip a shaky head under a dock. I hook one. And it wasn't a great big one, but it would have helped. Well, it gets hung under the dock. Guido trolls up there. We take his seat out, get up under the dock, and go through all the extremes to get this fish. And I don't get the fish. I don't land. So if I do land that fish, I'm leading the tournament. I fish with Brian Thrift the final day, and I would have zeroed. I'm just telling you, I would have zeroed. I know what he was doing. I know the caliber angler that Jason Johnson is, who was leading and did let fish with Brian Thrift on day 3 and did zero. I would have zeroed. Instead, I fished with Randy Haynes. Awesome man. Learned a lot, and I didn't catch a lot. Actually, I may have caught one, but it was a 3. Yeah, I did. I caught one. It weighed 3 even, and I won the tournament. So at the time when I lost that fish, it was like, man, that sucks. I would have been leading. But what that fish loss did was won me the tournament. Losing a fish. How many times can you say, oh, I lost a fish, but it won me the tournament because I lost?
Randy Haynes is another guy that's kind of famous for his short.
Yeah, he is. Come to think of it.
Him,
Think of
him
it.
and Patrick Walters got. I think I get them from the same tailor.
Well, see, I think the deal is Randy's a big old tall giant. And he's a grown man, and they just don't make big boy shorts big enough for Randy.
This
I
is
don't
true.
know what the deal is with Patrick, but I don't think it's the same thing.
Well, New, man, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out. Glad to call you a friend. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day, catching bass to talk to us here on the podcast about, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia fishing in the month of April. And you can take all that to the bank.
Take it to the bank. I'm actually fixing to slide up to the bank. I'm going to see if I can see me a couple laying up there. Man, it's always fun. I love cutting up with you. You're so easy to make fun of. And yeah, it's a good time. I'm enjoying this beautiful weather, a little bit of breeze. My family's on the way down here. So we're going to take my rider. You took your rider turkey hunting this morning. I'm going to take my rider bass fishing this afternoon. And yeah, I'm going to give me a good dinner tonight. Get up early in the morning and slide a little bit north to the Pasquotank River, and or maybe it's to Pasquotank River. I don't know what it's called, but it's Albemarle Sound. I'm gonna go look for some bass. Always a good time. Love you, Ben. And Ben is what or what? What was it?
I got a photo. I got a photo we can use on the YouTube thumbnail.
Very good, very good. Ben, take care of yourself.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah, you can take it to the bank. Hold the line, hey, you know we on the way. All the time, yeah.